Welcome to the Doctors in the House, your health show. Good evening. Welcome. This is a program about wellness, mental health, and disease prevention. I'm Dr. Morency, your host. Thank you for tuning in to 99.1 FMWGM St. Petersburg, Florida. And for those of you who are listening online, 99 Jam the Berg, thank you. So, as we're about to listen to the show, let me remind you that if you have any questions or concern or comment, you can always call us at 727-637-2416. The topic tonight is the human microbiome, an early case story at its application. And the question we're going to address really, how can we put the benefit of the microbiome information into applications? Very important questions. Yes, we're going to do the microbiome again because there's so much information to share with all of you. Great information, actually, and it's too bad there's not much time. We're probably going to need a bunch of show really to provide to share with you all this thing that's happening in this field. But tonight we're going to do something special. All right. First, I will give you, especially for those of you who have not really listened to the show before, we'll give you a little rundown of what the human microbiome is all about. Capture and do it a little briefly so I can have enough time. And the second part of the show is I have a special guest for you that can go over these interactions between us and our own microbiome. This is a very, very interesting story about somebody who was able to intuitively apply all the information from the microbiome project way before anyone knew about the results of the project. Thus, able to transform herself into a healthy and vibrant human being. Please sit back, relax, and listen. The microbiome is always has been interesting to me. As a retired family doc, I cannot think of any way, any natural way to take charge of your health, to take charge of your body, than knowing what to do about yourself, knowing that you're going to use something that's belong to you, something that is you. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the microbiome. The microbiome is actually you. Okay, so you will learn over time to interact with it, and that's why it's so vital to really give you those information. Now, as far as the microbiome is concerned, the word may be intimidating to some, but essentially what the microbiome means really is the totality, the collections of all the microorganisms. By that I mean all the germs or microbe that live on us and within us. And that's the microbiome or human microbiome or the gut microbiome. Another term some of the scientists would use is the gut microbiota. And what are those germs? We talked about it before briefly. Let's recount. The germs are that are living with us are bacteria, viruses, fungus, and protozoa or parasite. Okay, so, but for the purpose of really understanding what's going on, we might as well tell you that bacteria is the germ that's been most studied. We know more about the bacteria than anything else. And so, for the purpose of simplifying this, I may more so call this the gut, your gut bacteria. It's our bacteria, so to speak. Okay? Now, this bacteria, where are they? Well, they are all over the place. You find them on your skin, your eyes, your genital tract, and mostly they live in the gut, in the intestine. It's about 100 trillions of bacterial cells in our body, just about the same amount as human cells. So we're neck and neck when it comes to that. But as far as genetic is concerned, there are more bacterial genes in the body, 100 times more than human cell. So in a sense, you could say, really, we are more bacteria than actually human because they're there to really help us to really take care of us. They are ours. The other important fact about bacteria is that diversity really matters. You know, in nature, diversity also matters, but here, the more different type of bacteria you have in your system, the healthier you tend to be. Okay, so briefly about bacteria, this is nothing new. Our relationship with bacteria. This bacteria thing was discovered with the first microscope that ever been invented. Just and except we didn't know what it was. I mean, we know it was a bacteria, but we didn't know what they do. And over the years, we know and basically have been informing folks that bacteria cause severe infection and essentially kill people. So this adversarial relationship between human and bacteria have remained for a long time until recently. Now we're finding out more and more about those bacteria. And around 2005, 2007, the Human Microbiome Project. This is a collections of to study what is the microbiome, and the question is really what is a normal microbiome. This project was launched by NIH, National Institutes of Health, and since then, the result within 5 years, the result have been coming. So by 2022 or so, there have been every week, all over the world, information are coming about the microbiome. So what we know for sure now is that the bacteria is not, it's never been our enemy. The bacteria are us. They work for us. They really function for us. And that's very important to know. And the microbiome includes both good, so-called good, and the pathogenic bacteria, which is the bad bacteria. But they live in peace unless there's a change in the relationship in the gut. So we're gonna really briefly go through the functions of the microbiome. But the thing to remember is that no, bacteria doesn't really want to kill you. Okay. Now that you have enough information about the microbiome, you would know that there's a lot of function we do in our body. We cannot do it without bacteria. For instance, breast milk. An infant would not be able to digest breast milk from the mom without a bacteria. Okay? And when you look at the main function of bacteria over the years, the one that's been studied a lot is the digestion. The digestive process is very, very important. And because through the large intestine, when we ingest fiber, those fibers actually feed the bacteria that live in the colon and then producing chemicals that are essential for our health. One of those chemicals is a short chain fatty acid, which are really very important. They are responsible for cardiovascular function, health, help with chronic disease, diabetes, obesity, inflammatory bowel disease. All those are functions, and you know, may not know, but the bacteria produce vitamin B12, vitamin K, and lots of little chemicals. It's a factory. We feed them, we instruct them, and they make chemical that we use. They use signal that alert us about what's going on in the body. For instance, another function of bacteria, which is very important, is the immune system. They control our immune system. The bacteria have a relationship, communication with the cells whenever there is a threat to tell them to get ready to produce those anti-inflammatory substances. And more importantly, recently we find out that the gut microbiome is essential for brain function. My last show was about the healthy microbiome healthy brain, because it turned out that all the neurotransmitters that um, the brain use to treat to make us feel better, reduce anxiety, we control depression, they are not necessarily made in the brain. Most of them are made in the gut. Serotonin is made in the gut. So all those functions are being known now. So what we have to remember though, this interaction between the bacteria and ourselves, it's a two-way street. We take care of the bacteria, we feed them, especially what they need, and they do the work for us. So what they require from us is for us to give them what they need, to keep them healthy, to eat the food that they require for their health. Okay, so lots of this, and the thing about the microbiome, this is a gift that the gift that keep on giving, because now there's more and more and more research. There are biotech being formed, entrepreneur, the pharmaceutical company are investing in different ways to use the microbiome to treat people. So this is a fascinating subject that people are going to talk about for a long time, but I want you to be aware of it, to know that you have control of your, as a matter of fact, I call them your gut bacteria. Forget the microbiome. This is your baby here. You're taking care of them, they'll take care of you. So what do they want from you, really? Well, I want you to know it this way. Knowing that what those bacteria have been doing for us and what more they can do as we learn more and more about them, we need to intentionally interact with them. And sometimes we've been doing that. For instance, if you ever eat some yogurt after you had taken some antibiotics for your gut infections, or for you have a yeast infection in your vagina, you take yogurt, for instance. So that's going to help. That's already using the power of the bacteria to help, and we need to do more and more in that. Another example in terms of current treatment. Now we're moving really more recent stuff. There's a bacteria called C. difficile, Clostridia difficile. This is a bacteria that can cause severe intestinal infection in the gut, primarily in the colon, which has been very, very difficult to treat. And this infection is caused primarily by people who take excessive antibiotics. And if you're not already in good shape and you take a lot of antibiotics, you develop this, because what they do is, traditionally when we take antibiotics, the antibiotics do affect the good bacteria. They kill the good bacteria, and now the bad one take over. So that part is very crucial, because now we can actually do FMT, which is fecal microbiota transplant. Basically, when you do a transplant from somebody with a normal microbiome, and you transplanted it to a person with C. difficile or some kind of inflammatory disease, but C. difficile is over 90% effective as a treatment for this. Okay, but you can imagine if there was a time where you know about not taking unnecessary antibiotics, you can there apply the information from the microbiome and actually protect yourself from developing a disease. Don't wait until it's too late. And that's the purpose of this campaign, as far as I'm concerned, because that information really belongs to everybody. We can use our gut bacteria to stay and remain healthy, and not waiting until it's too late, when we have to end up in the hands of the specialists and the high tech and the pharmaceutical company. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the things that bacteria want from you, and then I will turn over to my guest to discuss her fascinating story. The bacteria in the gut, lower intestine, love fiber. They love fiber. And actually they need fiber. When you feed them fiber, they grow, they are happy, and they make all those sorts of magical chemicals, including the vitamins, the short chain fatty acid that we talk about, that are such an important in control of chronic disease. Okay. The other thing is fiber. Well, the source of fiber great source of fiber really are those diverse fruits, vegetables, and legumes that we can eat. Those work wonders for the gut microbiome. Okay, fermented food, things like kefir, fermented vegetables, kimchi, kombucha. Those, those foods sometimes people may not necessarily like because of the taste, but those are natural anti probiotics, so to speak. Okay. Um, you can also use commercial probiotic. The probiotics are live bacteria in a capsule where you can buy over the counter. They call them supplement. And sometimes they may not be reliable because they're not controlled by the FDA. And sometimes you may not necessarily have the proper bacteria in them, or some of them don't have any bacteria at all, or they have bacteria who are not actually functioning. And when they compare, they tested people who take natural probiotics, such as those fermented food. When they measure their microbiome, they see a diversity and growth in the microbiome. Whereas some folks who take probiotic, commercial probiotic, they barely make the grade. So taking natural things is absolutely recommended. Now, uh, I'm gonna obviously do a show in the future to really drill down on some of those things. People really want to know what to eat, exactly what to eat. But briefly, the other thing that gut bacteria ask of us is if we stay healthy, for instance, exercise. People who exercise have a more diverse microbiome and also very healthy microbiome. So sleep, good sleep, exercise, and manage your stress, they're all really good. So I'm gonna stop there in terms of that information, and hopefully we can catch up. I'm gonna introduce my guests. Folks, it is my pleasure to introduce to you in the studio with me, Micki Morency, who's gonna really tell her story. She is, by the way, she is not a medical doctor, but to be precise, she just doesn't have the medical license. So, Micki, I hope your input here really is gonna be valuable for us, and I thank you for really coming to the show. Please welcome to my show. How are you today?
Oh, well, good evening. I'm great.
Good, good. So I don't want to tell your story for you, but just tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're here.
Well, well, as he had introduced me, my name is Micki Morency, and I'm a mother of daughters, and I'm a wife and sibling and a writer. Um, so I actually have been um, dealing with some health issues like in the past 20 years. And as you know, being married to him as a physician, I really had access to the best specialist in the community, but nobody really was able to take care of me. So, like,
Let me refresh that thing because I was there, and believe me, it was a very very stressful time in our life. We had teenagers, and when you got sick, and I know all those folks as you mentioned, but you keep getting in the hospital, getting all kind of medications, and some of them were powerful medications, steroid. Um, in the end, you were not getting better. You were so exacerbated. Um, you kind of took matter in your own hands. So, could you tell us about this story?
well, yeah. I left the hospital after two visits, I think, in the mid 2000s, and with a lot of prescriptions. And I started taking them, and I wasn't really feeling better. So I decided to do some research on my own because I've learned over the years that I think as patients we need to be partners with our caregivers. So my research led me to learning about what's going on in my gut, because my diagnosis really was IBS. There was a lot of stuff going on in my gut.
IBS meaning
Meaning,
inflammatory bowel disease,
exactly.
and some arthritis as well, inflammations.
Yeah, I had I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and ulcerative colitis, to be exact. But so as I was taking the prescribed medication, I also started reading up on what goes on in our gut, and I started with a book called Digestive Health. And I know nothing about bio microbiome. I mean, like he said, it was more like intuitively that I decided that if you're putting food in your stomach for sustenance, then it needs to be doing more than just feeding your hunger. It needs to do, something more. So that's when I discovered that there were food that were specific to treating gut inflammation, to treating what they call leaky gut, which is what primarily had landed me in the hospital. So I made a lot of changes in my diet.
Yes.
It was, I think it was more like method of elimination. I started eliminating things and then see how I feel, and then I add, and so I measured, my sense of well-being, based on what I consume for the day. So to my
Let me ask you this, Scoop. You said you're starting eliminating things. I think it might be a good idea to know, based on you, what you have eliminated and then replaced with.
Well, okay, I think the first thing that I've eliminated is sugar. I mean, I was never a big consumer of junk food per se, but I was just eating on the run because I was busy, running a family, running a business. So I started paying attention to what goes on in my body. So I eliminated sugar. I eliminated
Flour.
alcohol. I eliminated flour. I've even eliminated meat. So for the past 10 years or so, I stopped eating meat. I eat a lot of vegetables and fruits, and I started tapping into stuff that comes out of the ground, such as
plant-based food.
Yeah, such as I'm a great believer in like ginger and aloe, and so I have this concoction that I make at home that I really believe in. So it's all natural stuff, and I have to share with you all that I stopped taking all the prescribed medication because when the doctor told me that I would have to be on prednisone for the rest of my life on a maintenance dose, that's when I knew that I needed to do something, to make myself better.
Well, one other thing that I really, because I was really aware of that, not only I was in prime of my practice, I was aware of the limitation of what we know about inflammatory bowel disease because there was no cure per se. And when your gastroenterologist starts saying, well, in addition to the steroid, they're gonna try you on some biologic. That's what really you freaked out, and you said no, and you start changing, your food. So what about the fermented food? Were you eating fermented food before? Because this is essentially bacteria.
No, not really. I mean, that's one of the components that I've added because I've done a lot of reading about probiotic, and it kind of makes sense because if we take antibiotic to kill something that's bad, so I mean, potentially it's going to kill good stuff as well. So it makes sense to replace, what's being taken out by the antibiotic. So that's where the fermented food comes in, and so I'm a big believer in sauerkraut and kefir and stuff with live cultures that kind of like feed your gut.
So here you are. You start changing. Well, you were not a great fan of junk food, as you said, but you start eating plant-based food, lots of vegetables and fruits, and you added fermented food, you eliminated sugar, which is sugar is actually great causes of inflammations. Okay, this is essentially what the information about microbiome tell you. One other thing I didn't say in the bacteria doesn't like refined sugar. They don't like simple sugar. They don't like artificial sugar either. Those are fake. And what happens is when you don't feed those germs in the intestine, they get hungry. And when they get hungry, you never want to cross the bacteria. They're very smart as well. Okay, when they get hungry, they start feeding on your intestine. Okay, and that's where the leaky gut come from. That's where all this inflammation. That's why the special product that make the short chain fatty acid, just like omega-3, are anti-inflammatory. They really help restore not only the gut but produce healthy bacteria, and those command the cells to make all those ingredients, which fight inflammation, which produce neurotransmitter. So that's amazing. Any other thing you did?
Well, I just want to add that, I mean, I find like the medical community doesn't ever tell you how to eat better as a mode of treatment. I mean, they'll give you plenty, prescription for drugs. So, but in the long run, I mean, I'm a strong believer that whatever you put in your body, it needs to be healthy. I mean, you need to do whatever that you have to do